Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over a canon story of how Darth Vader absolutely destroyed Obi-Wan's hut on Tatooine. Now, this is canon, so we could see it in the show if they do decide to perhaps take us to that point in time, flashing forward closer to A New Hope than where the Kenobi show will take place, which is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith and 10 years before A New Hope. Now, shortly after the destruction of the first Death Star, Vader found himself dueling against Luke Skywalker on the Imperial weapons manufacturing world of Simoon 1. During most of the fight, he was surprised by the young Skywalker, but not in a good way. He couldn't figure out why Obi-Wan had chosen this boy, who was so unskilled in saber combat, as the future of the Jedi. It wasn't until Vader used the Force to pull Luke's lightsaber into his own hands that he realized something. The weapon Luke was wielding was his very own, the lightsaber of his youth, when he was a general in the Clone Wars. In that moment, his hand froze, and instead of bringing his lightsabers down against Luke, his hand filled with questions. Why did Obi-Wan give this random boy his lightsaber? What was so special about him? As his mind buzzed with questions, the surrounding battle between rebels and Imperials surged, and Luke managed to get away in the frenzy. But the rest of the conflict, Vader simply followed Luke around the battlefield, peering closer and closer at the boy, slowly unearthing a truth that he could barely conceive. Luke might be his son. Needing confirmation, Vader bullied Jabba the Hutt into giving him access to two of his best bounty hunters, one of which was the Mandalorian known as Boba Fett, and the other Black Christensen. After apprehending Luke on the planet of Tatooine, Fett failed to capture the boy, but he did secure some vital intelligence, a name, Luke Skywalker. When Fett returned to Vader and reported that Luke's full name was Luke Skywalker, Vader realized his suspicions were correct. The Emperor had lied to him. His child had survived, and he was powerful in the Force. Desperate for more information about his son, Darth Vader took a secret trip to Tatooine himself. There, he went to the homestead of Owen Lars, where he hoped to find out more. Unfortunately, it was hard to look beyond the handiwork of the stormtroopers who had brutally murdered Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru just a few weeks prior. Standing within the center courtyard of the moisture farm, Darth Vader was perhaps a bit disappointed. He obviously wanted to see his son. He thought that he just wanted to capture Luke and turn him to the dark side in order to defeat the Emperor and rule the galaxy. But if you think about Darth Vader's fall to the dark side, he only succumbed because he was trying to keep those he loved from dying. While Vader might have tricked others and even himself into believing that he pursued Luke to create a new powerful ally in the Force, the truth was probably much simpler. Vader just wanted to reunite with his family. Maybe this was the last piece of Padme that he ever had, could ever have. Unsatisfied with the barren, featureless Lars residence, Vader then turned his attention to the last known whereabouts of Luke, Obi-Wan Kenobi's hut. It was there, right after the destruction of the Death Star, that Luke Skywalker faced off against Boba Fett. When Vader entered the tiny home, he touched the lightsaber burns and the blaster marks on the clay walls. He was amazed at how powerful Luke Skywalker was, but also disappointed that he was so ill-trained. Vader wondered to himself, how could Obi-Wan Kenobi have neglected Luke's training like this? When the Sith Lord had seen enough, he exited the hut and turned to Dr. Aphra. The young scientist had accompanied Vader on this journey, and she was one of the few people in the galaxy that he could rely on for discretion. He would never use Imperial officers to help him track Luke down. If word ever got back to the Emperor, he would kill him at worst and humiliate him at best. When he looked at Obi-Wan Kenobi's hut from a distant desert dune, it's hard to know what Vader was imagining. He had just given Dr. Aphra the order to destroy the structure. The special sphere-like bomb the doctor constructed was enough to reduce the building to molecules, to atoms, as Thanos would say, ensuring that no Imperial forces would ever be able to link Vader to the site. But was there another reason that Vader wanted to whip Obi-Wan's hut from existence? Was this, yet again, an act of revenge for what Vader considered to be Obi-Wan's betrayal on the planet of Mustafar all those years ago when they had their duel? Now surely by this point, even though Vader had engraved hating Obi-Wan into his daily torment, it was obvious that Kenobi, not Palpatine, was his true friend. After all, Emperor Palpatine claimed that Vader's children had died in order to manipulate the fledgling Sith into better serving him. Or perhaps Palpatine just truly didn't know. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan spent 20 years hiding on Tatooine, making sure that Vader's own son was well taken care of. Instead of revenge for the duel of Mustafar, did Vader order the destruction of the hut out of shame? Possibly, but I think it was out of anger. I think for Vader, everything that Obi-Wan stood for reminded him a lot of Anakin and in turn a lot of Padme, and in turn again of Anakin's failure to keep Padme alive. So destroying Obi-Wan Kenobi's home was a good idea to hide evidence from the other Imperials, sure. But you have to remember, just a few days prior to this, Vader had dueled Obi-Wan, and for all Vader knew, he had been the cause of the old Jedi Master's death. It obviously was quite a surprise to Vader to know that Obi-Wan had been guarding his son on Tatooine for all of these years. But more than a surprise, it must have burdened the Dark Lord with shame. And before his redemption, Darth Vader only had one way to deal with his emotions like shame, that tempted to drag him towards the light side. He destroyed things. And on this day on Tatooine, besides hiding his tracks from the Emperor, Vader was very likely trying to nuke away his own feelings along with Obi-Wan's hut. Something I find interesting about Vader is that he always has some psychological motive for doing things. It's so much more than his just need to perhaps slay Jedi or destroy Obi-Wan's hut for being angry. I think a lot of these things are really just internal hatred that he has for himself. Vader is a sad person. He really does hate his life, but he's a trooper. He knows that there's no other path than to continue the one you have created for yourself. And this is why he stuck with the Emperor. This is why he continued to do the things he did, until of course Luke Skywalker came around and made him remember who he truly is, Anakin Skywalker. Very excited for the Kenobi show and excited for Anakin's return in Star Wars. And one thing in particular with the Kenobi show that I'm really excited for is not just, to see the action and Vader and Kenobi fight again and the Inquisitors and this and that, but to see the overall character development and the evolution that this show will provide for these two characters. I don't really care about anybody else in the show. I don't care about the Inquisitors. I don't care about even seeing Luke, or maybe even some of the other bigger names of characters that we may see. This show for me is all about Kenobi and Vader, and to show their overall struggle with the decisions that they've made, well, particularly Vader's decisions that he's made for his life, and how it's turned the galaxy from the Galactic Republic into the Empire, and how Kenobi has to deal with these trials and tribulations that he will need to go through in order to keep Luke safe and in order to keep himself alive so that he can continue the training of the Last Jedi eventually. Hope you all have a great day. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.